afternoon. So my name is Curtis. We're going to go ahead and get started. And today I want to talk to you about my journey of finding some success here in the App Store. The App Store is a really interesting place to be in. You know, it's kind of weird to think it only came out 8 years ago. The iPhone was only 9 years ago. And yet, when you go to an airport now, they're scrambling to install power plugs everywhere because it's just changed our lives. Everyone has a phone. Everyone needs power. And the App Store has really changed a lot about software too. A bunch of people who never got into software before, their first app is on iOS. You know, early App Store days was filled with that. The person who learned Objective-C released a game and earned hundreds of thousands of dollars. It also has a bunch of new companies coming in. You know, back in the 90s or the early 2000s, Nike would never have any kind of app on the Mac or on Windows. They were on the web, and that's all they cared about. But now, Nike just had their huge new mobile app come out 2 days ago. That's a big part of their digital strategy, is being on mobile, because that's where everyone is. So you have this place to sell software that is young, yet rapidly maturing, finding new interests from both new developers, new suppliers, to new consumers, a bunch of people who would never normally download software. And that certainly leads to a lot of failure. You know, it seems like it's happening more and more, but really I think that's just a sign of the growing and maturing market. But you hear it a lot about how apps fail. And as humans, we like to find reasons for failure. We're programmed to do that. It's not that we necessarily want to blame something out of a malicious way, but we certainly look for those kinds of things. And the internet, as it never has a shortage of anything, certainly has no shortage of quotes about that. You know, you'll see tons of blog articles out there about Apple's holding us back because we don't have apps from Apple. You know, we don't have paid upgrades. I've read countless articles about how paid upgrades are the lifeblood of indies, and without them, we can't succeed. No free trials, specifically time-boxed free trials, 30-day, whatever. Without those, there's no way to get people to download our software when we try and charge up front for it. We don't get customer information. You know, Apple hides all that information from us, and without that, we can't connect to our customers. And because of that, we have a terrible support channel. The rating system, with the 1 stars being the way the customers get our attention, you know, it's kind of laughable, but that's holding us back. Or App Store discovery. You know, having to distribute through the App Store, that is a really hard way to try and find new consumers. And Apple might try new things like App Store search ads, which I'm personally a bit excited for, but we're going to find new reasons that those are causing people to fail. But maybe it's not Apple. Maybe it's you just can't make a certain type of app work. Maybe you can't make freemium apps work. These got pretty popular in 2012. A lot of people tried, and a lot of people failed to make them work. And I've seen plenty of articles about how don't even bother with freemium. Getting that balance of paid versus what you give away for free to drive in-app conversions is just too hard. So don't try. Don't do paid up front. Nobody's going to pay up front for your app anymore. It's all about being free. We're going to see this a lot this fall. I have money riding on this. People will say, don't do subscription-based apps. You can't make subscription-based apps work for software. It's just not a thing. You have to be HBO. You have to be Netflix. You have to be some kind of content provider to make this work. We will see these articles. Or go up a little bit higher. You can't make consumer apps work. Go business to business. Consumers are fickle. They don't value software. Don't even bother. Look elsewhere. So the problem is Apple holding us back. The problem is customers not appreciating good software. The problem is the market. It's super saturated. Anyone can put an app out there now, and that's what you're competing with. So these are holding us back and preventing us from succeeding. And don't get me wrong, it's okay to complain about a way that Apple is failing us. It's okay to point out the limitations that we're running into. But the problem is when we turn these from just complaints into beliefs, they seem so final. They seem like all this stuff is out of our control, so why try? So the way I like to look at it is the problem is our assumptions. How we go about dealing with these roadblocks and the assumptions that we have for how we should solve those problems is actually what's holding us back. These are great because we can control them. It's not depressing to hear that you can't make a freemium app, so don't try. It might be, we'll just try and find another way to make that work. And these assumptions are baggage. And they come from all over the place. A lot of baggage that we have specifically on the iOS ecosystem is from Mac development. A lot of people came from Mac development in the mid-2000s onto iOS and brought 2 decades, more than 2 decades of this is how you ship software with them. Before we had cloud-based services, before the internet was even super, super big the way it is today, apps were still these little isolated binaries. And going to the App Store, a lot of that has changed. Or maybe it's not just Mac developers. I certainly don't want to throw them under the bus. It can also be your company. I'm sure a lot of us here today, you're not necessarily independent, you might be at your company. And it might be how your company assumes that you need to do things. It might be how you think that you need to address your market a certain way. All those things add up to things that are stopping us, I think, from succeeding. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. If you challenge a bunch of the things that you're the baggage that you're bringing to the product that you're trying to create, I think that there's no way to guarantee success, but that your odds of success are going to go up non-insignificantly. So like I said, my name is Curtis. I'm an independent software developer. I've been on the iOS platform since the SDK came out. Before that, I was on web for about a decade. And a little over 5 years ago, I quit my job to go full-time independent as a developer. And since then, I've been a mix of my own products and of consulting, which actually recently joined up with a friend to start Breakpoint Studios, a software design shop, because we both wanted to be able to take on bigger clients that we could independently. When I'm not programming, which is a huge passion of mine, snowboarding. Best time of the year for me. Fresh snow, 7 inches in the morning there, Killington, Vermont. Sometimes it does bite me in the butt. Those trees are immovable objects. My leg, not so much. But like a lot of people, eventually my passions, they started to collide. I love snowboarding, I love programming, so of course, like any other iOS programmer, I decided I'm going to make an app for that. So that's what I did. So I launched Slopes in 2013, and it's very similar to Nike Plus, Runkeeper, Strava, Map My Run, all those fitness apps you see the runners use. They'll strap it on their arm for the run, it'll use GPS to record all their data. This does the same thing for skiers and snowboarders. But unlike those running apps, it can figure out what's a lift, what's a run. Speeds on lifts don't matter towards your top speed or distance. And I decided to launch this in 2013. And back then, like I said, freemium was kind of picking up steam. That's the way how you do it. But I've always been from the Mac. So I said, I'm going to charge up front for this. I'm not doing freemium. And I charged the premium price of $4. Everyone said go 99 cents back then. And eventually I actually raised it to $8, which did help me find a little bit more success. But I was certainly running into a lot of roadblocks along the way. It was starting to pay for my ski season, which is good. I was finding very side revenue success with it. But it was never anything serious. So I decided I wanted to start kind of looking at some of the pain points I was feeling. This is certainly one of them. I was paid up front. I had a free competitor. Free competitor, in my opinion, was not that great. But I would get these comments all the time. Why should I pay $5 for you? And I had to argue this every time. My customers just couldn't try it. Or this. When Tweetbot 3 came out, there was certainly a lot of negative feedback, or Tweetbot 4, there was a lot of negative feedback on Twitter about how are you charging for this again? I've already paid you twice. I don't want to pay you again. This is some of the more sanitary tweets that they received. But for the lifeblood of indies, I don't want that to be my lifeblood. I'm tired of making these arguments. So I decided I wanted to reevaluate a bunch of the assumptions that I had made about how I needed to build, monetize, and connect to my users with Slopes. And did that in 2015, about spring, summer, and launched after a couple months in November of 2015, Slopes 2.0. Apple Watch was not out that came out 3 months later, but easy screenshot. And I decided I wanted to try some new stuff. So I decided I was going to try subscriptions. I'm not HBO or Netflix, but a lot of the fitness apps in my category, Runkeeper, Strava, $50 a year. I decided I would try for that. I didn't want to do the whole normal indie thing of I need this big splash for launch day sales. Those are so hard to predict. I wanted to play the long game with recurring revenue. And The business model changes were a pretty big aspect of, I think, why Slopes is getting much more traction than I originally found. But it's not just that. There are a bunch of other challenges, a bunch of other assumptions I challenged along the way. And I want to start dissecting those. This is a hard one. You will have a hard time being objective here. The idea that whatever you're doing will work. Now, work can mean a lot of things to many people. For a lot of people, just getting an app in the App Store, being able to go to your parents and say, I made that, is enough. You're looking for that pride, that joy of building something. For the purposes of this conversation, I'm saying work is you're generating enough revenue that you can sustain development, that you can justify continuing to work on it. And this is getting really hard because I think the odds of it working, we haven't necessarily fully internalized. We're going to fail a lot of times. As a community, we will have a vast majority of more failures than successes, and that's okay. That's a mature market. But you're going to save yourself a lot of time and a lot of heartache if you can objectively ask yourself this question up front before you struggle with, I can't find a way to market my app. I can't find users to pay for it. You need to answer that up front. And it's hard because certainly our friends and family, but also specifically this community is very supportive. You know, no one here ever says, why did they win an ADA? They don't deserve that. Everyone here is always like, yeah, you won an ADA, that's awesome. And we do that at the feedback phase too. And it's hard when I'm getting that feedback, I need to separate that from validating my product. It's way too easy to think, oh, my friend Steve said that this app is going to work. So yeah, that means it's going to work. It doesn't work until you have cash in hand. You probably haven't found product market fit yet. There's a lot of work you need to do at this stage. And this is an entire talk, books, blog post in and of itself. Specifically, Charles Perry had a talk this morning about validating your product idea. I would look that up online once they release. I'm guessing after 2 weeks, the videos will be up. There's so much more that can be talked about that, but we need to realize that we're in an industry now where it's okay when restaurants fail. That's an accepted thing. We don't say that everything around the restaurant industry needs to change, otherwise restaurants can't succeed. It's just, yeah, it's hard to make a restaurant. So we need to do the same with ads. It's hard to make ads. We're in a very large market with a lot of constraints. So when you're trying to figure out if this is going to work, one of the dangerous things I see people cite as a reason that their app will work is this idea. The idea that great design will translate to success. And this is actually how Slopes started. I mean, I am certainly guilty of this too. You know, at the time I was using a 99-cent app in the App Store when I had the inspiration for Slopes, and I hated it because the design, in my opinion, was just terrible. I couldn't figure, the UX was atrocious. I couldn't figure out any of my data that I was getting back. I always referred to it as vomiting stats onto the screen. And so surely people would pay $4 for an app that they didn't have to fight. No. I was making that argument on Reddit all the time of why my app is worthwhile, why they should pay the extra couple bucks. And this assumption, I think, comes a lot from where we started, from the Mac. You know, most of us in the room probably use Macintosh, and we spend our money on that platform because we value good design, both in hardware and software. Functional high ground jokes aside, in general, Mac software and hardware is excellent. And we reward it with money, so we want to see that same kind of software thrive. But we also need to realize that a lot of the market that is on iOS, they aren't us. They're much wider than us. They are the people that will go out and buy a $200 HP laptop because that's all they need. They don't care how bad it is, and we'll argue with them constantly. I argue with my in-laws all the time. Why are you buying that Dell? They don't care. And it translates to that software too. And early in the Mac days, we had a self-selecting market. You had people who valued good hardware, spent a lot of money on that good hardware back when Apple tax was a thing, so of course they would appreciate and reward good software. And that was kind of a very tight market. But now we've brought in such a wide market that, you know, Tweetbot and Fantastical and all these great apps that we have on iOS and Mac, most people aren't using. We're using, and our community will certainly reward good software. But a lot of times our market is not this community. And that's something we really need to divorce from our planning stages. Because that good design, you need to know if that is actually translating to a business competitive advantage. Will your market reward that design? Because odds are a lot of the markets won't. They'll buy the 99-cent version of your $20 app just so they can save the money. They don't care if they have to fight it. They want to save that money. That's their priority. I can take Snapchat. A lot of us probably look at Snapchat and go, what the hell is up with that thing? I can't figure out how, well, actually I had somebody show me how to use it, but originally I can't figure out how to use this thing. It's objectively terribly designed by a lot of the opinions that the Apple community holds. But I didn't work for Snapchat, but using it more and more, I realized, actually I think they were pretty damn smart. They realized that good design, by our standards, was not going to give them a business competitive advantage. What was actually important to their users was the idea that they could use the app quickly. A very large swipe interface, no little next and previous buttons to tap. Terrible for discovery, but for their audience it didn't matter. If you're in school, your friend's going to show you how to use it on lunch, and then suddenly you're a power user? Like, that's fine. That was an acceptable barrier for them, and that actually, I think, is part of what's contributed to them succeeding. Ignoring traditional design standards, because for their market, those design standards would not be rewarded. Kind of back to the earlier slide. Whenever you see yourself saying this, just pause a second. You know, Apple needs to give us X. They need to give us free trials, paid upgrades, whatever it is. Again, it's not bad to complain and to request. But when you're stopping yourself because of this, you need to take a step back. You know, sometimes it's for two reasons to really look at it. Sometimes they will give us X. You know, if you remember back when the App Store came out, review ratings did not reset when new versions were pushed to the App Store. They would always carry forward. But the community started to complain because, well, I submitted an accidental crasher and I got all these 1 stars, and I fixed it nice and quick. A week later it got out. But now all these 1 stars are sitting there on my front page, and consumers don't know, is this 1-star complaint fixed or not? So Apple gave us what we wanted. Review ratings now reset every time we push out an update. Now we're fighting to keep the 5 stars on the front page. They gave us what we wanted, and it bit us in the butt in a different way. And I'm not trying to say Apple is this know-all, you know, they're giving us what we actually need, and they know what we need perfectly. But I think a lot of the times there are some assumptions that we're making about how it will help us, and it might not actually. You know, paid software upgrades would probably be a great example in the modern era. You know, imagine trying to have a cloud infrastructure supported multiple versions of your application as an independent developer. That's going to add a lot of baggage to you. Oh, I have to make sure this doesn't break 1.0. Who assumed the JSON API was going to work like this? Use some big data migration, and now all of a sudden you've broken all your old apps. But by constantly having your app update, it's a lot easier to very quickly say, we're dropping 1.0 support after 3 months because 98% of our customers will be on it. There's no barrier to keep them up to date with the latest. And the second reason is when Apple gives it to anyone, when Apple gives me paid upgrades or you free trials, all of your competitors will get it too, for probably just as little effort as it's going to take you to implement it. Free trials would certainly help a class of applications. Paid upgrades would certainly help a class of applications, but within that class, everyone's going to get it for free, which I would argue, yes, is a good thing. But another way to look at it is, for everything you're not giving, you have to fight to create your own advantage. You have to fight to find a way to satisfy those customer demands of something similar to a free trial without a hand-me-out. And if any competitor wants to copy you, they have to spend the same design and engineering time it takes to copy you. They don't just get it for free. When you're in a saturated market, this is extremely important. You need to find a way to differentiate yourself. So going back to slopes for a second, I said I wanted to do subscriptions, and that's what I did. And there are 2 main screens in slopes. When you're done for the day, you have the left summary screen, which is all the nice high-level stuff, how long you spent on a lift, how long you spent on a run. And on the right-hand side is the detailed breakdown. You can scrub that timeline at the bottom, see yourself move on the map, and it'll tell you that run you went 40 miles per hour, this one you went 35. So the left is kind of the everyone screen, and the right is kind of the enthusiast screen. So I went to look around the industry. I couldn't get free trials from Apple. I couldn't, at least time-based free trials. And even if I did, that would be terrible. Someone downloading my app in the summer, 30-day free trial, that means nothing. I did want paid upgrades. I wanted recurring revenue, so I looked into subscriptions. And I was looking around for other services that do this, and I kind of settled on Dropbox or Evernote, or a service that kind of grows with the user. A service that isn't Dropbox is a 30-day free trial. It's here, have 200 megs, and when you need to grow, the app grows with you if you pay. So the left-hand side, I just give to everyone for free. You can record with slopes 100 times a year, and you get all that high-level data. The right-hand side, the first time you go out every season, I'll give you that data. I want to give you a tease. As she said earlier, digital crack. I want to tease you, the first case is free, with what you're going to get if you pay for slopes. But then after that first time, I let you know, hey, you have to grab a pass. And every season, this is the pattern it follows. So if you want to be a free user on slopes for 4 years, you can. You're going to get a lot of great data for it. And then once you buy a pass, all that stuff is going to start getting unlocked. So I have free trials. And with subscriptions, I basically have paid upgrades. Every year, recurring revenue. Without having to argue with users why they should pay for my paid upgrade. Or hold back features to make it more enticing. And don't get me wrong, freemium is hard. This is hard. I've seen one of my competitors fail before me trying to do freemium. Getting this balance right is hard. But if you can make it work, now that's a huge competitive advantage. That competitor of mine, they're flailing all over the place to try and find a way to monetize. I think I found a pretty good balance, and now that's a huge advantage I have. They have to copy it. They don't get it for free. I'm going to piss you guys off with this one. So we have this assumption as product owners, product developers, that the core of our app, the features, the reasons we would tell someone, this is why you want to use my app, that's what we need to focus on when we're planning our product, when we're designing it, when we're developing it. And a lot of times, we argue that those are the features, that's what we need to spend our sprint on over all the other things we need as a business. Because those aren't part of our product. That's not part of what our product makes our product appealing. These are business health needs. And nobody cares about those. That's like eating your vegetables. But we need to eat our vegetables. So a big business need in the App Store is ratings. Any industry, social proof is extremely important for why someone should use your service or download your app or visit your restaurant. I don't know if you're anything like me, but when I go to Amazon, I check off that 4 and that 5-star filter before I even look at my search results. That's how important ratings are. And something I've noticed that's pretty interesting with iOS ratings, I mainly do iOS consulting, and one of my clients, he was also shipping an Android version of the app at the same time, and they launched at the same time, same features. Android followed iOS in terms of features and design. Actually, I think the Android ended up being a little bit buggier, no surprise. But when both of them came out, on the Android side, you're looking at, 4 stars, the app crashed once, there's no push notifications, I wish that they had that. But, I'd like to see where this app goes. I'm excited, 4 stars. On iOS, a less buggy version of that app would say 1 star, crashed once, no notifications, literally unusable. Give me these 6 features and maybe I'll give you 4 stars. There is a negativity bias in reviews on the App Store. I don't think anyone would argue against that. And I think some of that, I've tried to figure out why. My wife had an interesting idea that it might be because Apple has this just works mantra, and everyone expects apps to follow the same. It should just work. It should never crash. We're kind of inheriting some of Apple's baggage there. Regardless of the reason, it's something that we definitely need to solve. It's something we have to find a way to address. I'll wait. Open up the 360 app, please, 5 stars. And these are things, we laugh, but they're in apps because they work. My God, they work. If you put this in your app, you will drive a ton of ratings to your app. And don't lynch me. I'm not saying we need to implement this in our apps. I agree, these users are hostile, this gets in the way, this is not a good customer experience. But it's really easy to just go forward with the assumption that, okay, well, the popular third-party way to do it is bad. So, I'll worry about that later. We can't fix that problem. Apple needs to fix reviews. In the meantime, we're still getting flooded with 1 stars for good ads. And I don't think the core idea of this is a bad one. You have a bunch of users who are enjoying your app all the time, and they don't think to go to the App Store to rate. We can beg them in the release notes, but that's just not part of what standard consumers care about, at least within the iOS ecosystem. On Android, they're a lot more supportive. On iOS, they're not. So instead of assuming, okay, I'll wait for Apple to fix this, fix it myself. So Slopes, this is one of the main screens. You see all your activities, and if you're using Slopes enough, one of the times you'll launch it, this will be at the top of that table view. Same exact thing. Are you enjoying the app? If you are, ask them to rate it. If not, give me feedback. It's part of the table view. You can scroll right past it. It's not user hostile. As a product owner, I am more than comfortable with this. I think it's a great compromise. And it's not just good because it's now getting the tens of thousands of users who are enjoying my app to finally rate my app. It's great because when they hit that not really button, it gets them to contact me. And I'm able to intercept a lot of customer feedback before it grows to be hostile. I'm now able to empathize and humanize my service, my app, well before they hate me. And it's because it appears to them I'm being proactive. I'm reaching out and I'm saying, hey, what do you think? And users care about that. They like being acknowledged. They like thinking that I, as an independent, care about them as a user. And it's easy to say, well, why solve this? We'll deal with the 1 stars, but these are the unsexy features that we might have to pull sexy features for because this sets us up for longer-term success. And it really, really works. This is that client app I was talking about. So we launched the 1.0. We got some of those early down there, 28 1 stars, because it didn't have push notifications. The app was great, but it didn't have push notifications. So clearly 1 star. And really quick, we wanted to triage that. So he had actually a UI collection view and put it in there, same kind of trick. And this is where he is over a year later. He's consistently had a 5-star rating. And it's not scamming the App Store review system or rating system. These are people who are genuinely using the app, loving it, passionate customers that he knew he had, but they were never bothering to rate because that's just not what you do. You're busy doing something else. We don't have to worry about losing those 5-star ratings whenever we push out an update. That top one has been out for 3 weeks, and we already have 100 reviews. And those 4-star reviews are because he just launched a hockey news site, and that's not in the app yet. So clearly 1 star doesn't have hockey. But 93 5 stars to counter that. So as a product owner, Slopes, I have my season pass, and along the way, people are going to look at the season pass and say, you know what, $20, that's not for me. That doesn't have the features I want. But it's my responsibility to keep improving my season pass offering to say, I think this might convert you finally to come over. But the hard thing is educating users. We laugh that Facebook does this. It's hard when you're doing lots and lots of development to make these meaningful. But the truth is, we all know nobody reads those. Nobody reads the release notes. You don't have time. Apple has automatic updates on nowadays. You're getting, if you're like me, I woke up to 8 updates. I'm not going to read those. But we need to communicate this when it's important. So again, another really unsexy problem to solve. Apple should solve this for me, clearly. Release notes, I shouldn't have. Nope, did it myself. So whenever I push out a major update, I can have in my code trigger, I get 1 sentence at the top, it just drops down like a little push notification to say, hey, here's what's new. I think you should check out my release notes, which is down in my About screen. And this is my opportunity to take those people who looked at my season pass and said, $20, not worth it, and sell them on how I've improved my services to make it worth it to them. And this really works. When I push out a major update without the what's new, and then one with the what's new, I see double the number of users looking at my release notes. Again, a really boring problem to solve, but this turns to conversions, to paid customers. And that lets me keep going. Everyone has a newsletter. I had a newsletter when I started Slopes. It was on the website. Footer in a couple places, header in a couple places. Surprise, surprise, nobody signed up for it. After 2 years of having Slopes in the store, I had 81 subscribers. There's nothing you can do with a newsletter like that. I always felt like I was emailing a black void, and it sucked. So again, Apple needs to give me customer information, right? No, just ask for it yourself. So I knew I would get some when people signed up for season passes. I would have accounts associated with that because Apple would always have to sync that to all their devices. But I knew I would have tons and tons and tons of free users who never paid for my season pass. So I needed to find a way to get those email addresses. So this is what I ended up doing. During my onboarding experience, the very last screen, I say, hey, do you want to know more about what's going on with Slopes? Nothing tricky, no tiny little checkbox they have to uncheck, nothing that's user hostile, big button, sign up for the newsletter. They know what they're getting into. I, as a product owner, I can feel responsible with this. I'm not tricking my users. Some might argue this isn't the perfect user experience. Why are you getting in the way of them using your app? But you know what? I had a business need. I needed to know who my customers were. I've been incredibly surprised by this. Almost 8% of my downloads willingly give me their email addresses. And this is on the first winter. I increased my list by 2,000 people. 5 months. That's amazing. And I'm able to do all kinds of, when you're on iOS for so long, you get used to know customer information. I'm able to do all kinds of cool stuff now that I never could. Which again, if you go to a web SaaS convention, they'd be like, yeah, it's okay, that's what you do with a newsletter. But I did a run of stickers. Everyone loves stickers. And skiers and snowboarders love stickers. So I said, hey, mailing list, do you want some stickers? I got hundreds of responses from people around the world saying, yes, please, I have a ski club. We would all love your stickers. And I started getting pictures back of people putting them on their laptops, somebody down in Australia putting them on their skis while they're down there. Not a big deal. But now I'm making better connections with my customers. They're connecting me to an independent. They're putting a voice to my app. They know who I am. They know I'm not just some faceless corporate entity. Again, that was not a sexy problem to solve. There were so many features I would rather, as an engineer, I would find pleasure in tackling these problems or these design challenges. But once I started prioritizing my business needs, that's setting me up for longer-term success. So this is another hard one, you know, the idea that you can't ship without a certain feature. You know, I had to pull features to make room for those. And I have no super sage advice here. You know, the difference between a completely useless product and a true minimum viable product is a very tight walk. And I've only been able to gut check along the way, and I think I'm doing okay. I wish I could give you better advice there. But I have learned along the way, a lot of the things that I thought I had to ship with, I actually didn't. And I would maybe get one customer email saying, hey, are you going to add this? I could say, yeah, it's on the roadmap. You know, look at the iPad. It came without the ability to even use it unless you had iTunes. The iPhone didn't have copy and paste for 2 years. And as a community, we all looked at this and said, well, why didn't you ship with those? Duh, you need those. But Apple knew that the most important thing that they could do is they could get their product to market. They could get it in the hands of real users, get real feedback, and before they spent all that engineering effort solving custom copy and paste, that they knew they had a product that was even worth doing it on. I mean, look at the Apple Watch. They launched it, and that button down there, they thought it was a great idea. Once it was actually in the market, they quickly re-engineered it, realizing nobody's using this. And that's not feedback you're going to get from beta testers. That's not feedback you're going to get from your friends, your family, or even figure out yourself most of the time. You know, they always say no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. The market is your enemy. It really is. And the more time you spend not touching the market, the more risk you're going to take on. The more time you're going to go without knowing if you can generate revenue at all. So try and pull some features. You're going to be able to get away with more than you thought you could. Never assume that you from a month ago, 6 months ago, a year ago was right. Even in launching Slopes 2.0 and after 2.0, I had this grand plan for 2.0. I had thought it all through. I was wrong many times. Dramatic pause, I guess. So I had this idea all along that, you know, the way I would get recurring revenue was going to be subscriptions. Clearly, that's the way to do it. You know, I had seen other fitness apps in my category. They were a yearly subscription. Strava, Runkeeper, those guys. $50 a year or $40 a year, somewhere in there. So that's how I was going to do recurring revenue. So I had my $20 a year season pass, and then to try and learn a little bit from the web, I decided I was going to do some price anchoring, and I offered a 1-month trial, and that 1-month trial was specifically made to look terrible. It was overpriced by comparison. It was $8. So if you go skiing more than 2 months a year, clearly you're going to buy the year pass. Nobody should buy that month pass. So I launched Slopes early in November, and revenue started coming in. A bunch of people were buying my season passes. I got past the point that I'm like, did I just destroy my revenue? Turned out working out pretty well. But towards the end of December, I started noticing that way more people should be buying that month pass than I thought that they should. I made it there just to look bad, to make the year look better, and yet a couple days it almost approached the same revenue of the more expensive season pass. So it'd be easy for me to just stay the course, wear the anomaly, whatever, but at that point I need to challenge myself. I need to say, okay, what did I get wrong? The market's telling me something, what did I do wrong? And I was so obsessed with this idea of a season pass that, when you bought it for $20, every year you had to keep paying $20, otherwise your data is still there, but it gets locked down, like Netflix. You stop getting access to their stuff. I wasn't really seeing how customers thought it would work, which was different from a running app. Customers were thinking that if I buy a 1-month pass, any skiing or snowboarding I do during that 1 month is unlocked forever. But it's like I'm buying access to a ski resort. I'm buying access for that time period, and I get all the benefits for those things in the time period. And after that, if I don't have a season pass, fine, they're locked down, but that stuff I paid for stays unlocked. It was more of a time-based consumable, almost, than a subscription. And I had misassumed that. So after, of course, that spike and that realization was during the iTunes holiday shutdown, so I'm just spending Christmas shit. But after it came out, within 2 weeks, I was able to ship an update to Slopes to change how everything worked to be able to work like that. So it's based on if you had a pass when you recorded. And it was actually really, really good that I did, because you can see the green on the back half, that's the 1-month pass. It ended up making a substantial part of my revenue on the back half of the season. And it makes sense in retrospect. If you're going skiing in March and there's mud on the ground, you're not going to fork up $20 even knowing this will be good next year. No, your season's over. You don't want to invest any more money into it. That $8 option is really enticing to you. So I actually took that a step further, and over the summer I changed it. I removed the 1-month option, realizing what I had now, and I put in a 1-day option and a 1-week option, which aligns much, much better to the way that my users go skiing and snowboarding. They go on week trips or a day up to the mountain. I'm really looking forward to how that's going to work for me going into the next season. Still recurring revenue. But you can't assume that you're going to know what you need to do out of the gate. You need to be willing to constantly challenge that and to be receptive to the signals that the market is going to send you. Otherwise, you're going to stay the course, and your odds of failure will go up if you're not receptive to that. Last thing I want to talk to you about is the idea of emulation. The idea that what didn't work for him or what worked for her, those will do the same for you. And it's really easy when you're seeing blog posts saying, don't go subscriptions. Subscriptions worked great for me all over the place, to think that it'll do the same thing for you, but it won't. It's all circumstantial. And I've been up here saying subscriptions work great for me. I don't want you all to go home and do the same thing. It'll probably fail for you. I'm not kidding. And I want to contrast that with my friend Ben. So Ben just got out of university. He's a photographer. And a while ago, he released this really, really great camera app, Obscura. And part of what makes Obscura great is it's really good manual controls. It feels like you're using a DSLR on your iPhone. Really, really nice gestures for exposure, for focus. It really feels like a professional camera on my phone. Now, like every other photo app, it had filters, because thanks to Instagram, that's what you do with photo apps, you add filters. And that was his solution to monetization. He wasn't going to charge for his app. It's going to be free, and then you pay $5 for filters. He wrote about this, and he earned, I think it was about $750 over the course of a year with that in-app purchase. Even though freemium is supposed to be the way to go. Less than a 1% conversion rate of his installs translated to actual paying customers. So instead of, my acts of failure, he decided to give it another little go, and he planned to do 2.0. And in that, he would go paid up front. He would move that $5 in-app purchase to a $5 paid up front option. He would remove that in-app purchase completely. And he did that because he was starting to realize that people didn't value the filters, clearly. They valued his app. They valued that interface. And that's what they were getting for free. He wasn't placing barriers where their values were, where they were willing to spend money. He was placing his barriers where they didn't care. So he submitted 2.0 to the App Store, got approved, I think it was on a Wednesday, and he planned, okay, I'll launch after the weekend. It was Star Wars weekend. So nobody launches an app during Star Wars, so he figured, okay, I'll launch on Monday so I might get some press coverage. And he submitted it, pending developer release. Then Apple did something completely unexpected. I think they saw that he was pending developer release and figured, he's not going to sit on this, he's going to release it, we better feature it. So he got featured right there on the homepage. Best new app is 1.1, best new app. And he didn't realize this for like a day and a half, because nobody expects a feature. And he was looking at his numbers once he realized what was going on, why his crash reports went up a little bit, and he was still screwed. He had less than a 1% conversion rate. It didn't matter that he had tens of thousands of people downloading his app. That might give you a small bump in revenue, but the feature, he was wasting it. So he might have pissed Apple off, but he decided, okay, mid-feature, I'm going to launch my 2.0. They thought I was a free app, surprise, I'm paid. And he put his price tag on it. He launched 2.0. And as with any paid app, the downloads went down, but his revenue went through the roof. Within 10 days, he was earning 5 figures on an app that struggled to earn 750. He's not a Marco Arment, he's not an underscore, he's some unknown kid from Ireland. And he was able to do this. And it's not just because he got featured, that certainly helped. He's still been earning healthy revenue after the feature. But the feature is meaningless if your app is not set up to properly align why you ask customers to give you money and the value you're providing. If he had rolled that feature out at a 1.0, he may have made a couple $100. Instead, he earned a lot. And that's really what it comes down to. You need to experiment. You really need to figure out what's going to work for you, your style, your market, this market. Maybe you don't belong on iOS. Maybe you belong on the web. Maybe you belong on Android, maybe on the Mac. You need to experiment and figure out what works for you. And just like restaurants, there will be people that can come out and find instant success. They might be unknowns. They might be knowns. There are people who can launch an app today and they will succeed. Now, they've worked hard to earn that audience. And that's something we should all be trying to do too, but many of us won't have that advantage. Many of us are going to have to experiment over and over again to find what works, and to build all those advantages over time. And the only way we do that is by challenging everything we've been thinking. This is a new market. It's dramatically different from Mac software, from Windows software, from web SaaS, from traditional VC startups. It's also similar in many ways to those. But we have to figure out, if we really want to be iOS developers and launch our own products, we have to figure out how we fit into this, and we have to challenge all of those assumptions. And some might prove right, and that's great. But a lot of them you'll be able to work around. And the cool thing is, while you're busy working around them, there will be plenty of people saying, I can't do this. I'm going to write a blog post about how I failed and warn people off. But you can be there quietly working with your heads down, finding these ways around the system and making it work for you. A restaurant isn't going to complain that you need to demolish that street in order for me to succeed. All of these complaints is how the market is. This is the market we're in. If you choose to be in it, you need to experiment and find out how you can conceive in that market, not ask the market to change. It might. We might get App Store ads. But a lot of times it won't. So you need to figure out if you want to challenge your assumptions or if you want to go home. Thank you.